Everyone ready?
This is the SEC Insider Hit. Presented by your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Go local. Go with a home team.
Tom Luginbill with ESPN. Joining us on the Out of Bounds show, National Championship Day, as we get the Michigan Wolverines, Washington Huskies, Houston, Texas tonight. And the game actually starts pretty early. I like that. I'm down for a 6:30 kick. That's perfect for me. The SEC Insider Hit is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your car and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent in any of the 82 counties in Mississippi. Favorites.com to get a quote in 4 minutes or less. All right, Tom Luginbill, Michigan and Washington. Michael Penix against that Michigan defense, but especially that Michigan secondary. Who has the advantage and why? We are the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We're live in the BankPlus Studio. The show is driven by your next Ford F-150 truck at Mack Hike Ford, I-55 North in Jackson. All right, here we go. Luke's, who has the advantage? Michael Penix in the passing game or Michigan in that secondary? And I bet you're going to tie it into whether or not Michigan does what they did to Alabama as far as in that front. Where do you go there?
I think Michael Penix and his receiving core have the advantage if, and it's a big if, Michigan can't pressure Michael Penix, because that's the game within the game. If you peel back the layers and you go back and you watch Washington and you watch them on offense, it's very difficult to find a team that's been able to get Michael Penix Jr. off schedule. Now, he may be the best, not maybe, he is the best deep ball thrower in all of college football. I don't even think it's close. But where he might be at his best is he helps himself more than any other quarterback in college football because he gets the ball out of his hand so quickly. So to me, I want to see that Joe Moore award-winning offensive line for Washington and see how they handle Michigan, because Michigan decided to come after Alabama up front. And I'm very curious to see if they'll do the same thing to Michael Penix Jr., because if they just let him stand back there and just start throwing darts all over the field, Michigan will be in trouble. Nobody's had an answer for that passing game all year long. And I think that if we start to see Penix under duress, there are going to be problems for Washington.
Okay, so you give the advantage to Penix and those receivers over Michigan. What are you expecting? Well, let me walk this back a second. Penix and Jaden Daniels. If you were a head football coach, college football coach, and you got to pick between the two to start for you, who would you pick?
I'd probably have to go with Jaden Daniels just because of the running dynamic. I think that the danger that creates and what defenses have to account for when the quarterback can just up and take off and run, or can be a designated part of your run game, it just puts so much strain on you. That's a really good and difficult question to answer, because I don't think you could go wrong with either. And like I said, I've told a lot of people this. I've never seen a quarterback in college football throw the deep ball the way that Michael Penix does. It's flawless. Those are the most low percentage throws that you have in the game of football, and he makes them look routine.
How does he project to you? How does Michael Penix Jr., Washington Huskies quarterback, how does he project in the NFL for you?
I think he has to go to a place that is going to really tailor things to his skill set. I don't know if he's plug a guy into an NFL system and now just make him adapt to the system. I think you'll have to adapt to him a little bit. Now, the thing that I would be most concerned with is he has a very distinct history of injury and serious injuries. All right, so you've got the 2 ACLs, you've got the reconstructive shoulder, and on top of that, he's older. So there are going to be teams that will be concerned about that. Should they be? I think it's probably fair to say, yeah, I think it's a legitimate concern. But then you also got to look at his productivity and the fact that he hasn't been injured in the last 2 years. And a lot of the reasons why he hasn't been is you can't get to him. And that, to me, is why he has stayed healthy. Would that translate to the next level? Because you're going to get hit, you're going to get beat up. Would you be susceptible to a season-ending injury? That would be the question you'd have to ask.
Are you confident? So Michigan went after Alabama. There was a lot of talk that Bama's almost too big on the offensive line with their three dudes, 350 plus. Do you agree with that, Tom?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I also think that they overwhelmed with simulated pressures and bringing +1 and put some confusion into the offensive front of Alabama. And next thing you know, you've got a free rusher coming somewhere that should be accounted for, and he's not. When Michigan decides to walk up, when I say simulated pressures, you walk up and you've got, two guys in the A gap, and then you've got, two guys off the edge, and the next thing you know, they all scatter, and you're not sure who's coming and from where. That, I think, caused problems for Alabama. And Jalen Milroe, as great of an athlete as he is, he did not account for that well. I think Michigan banked on that. I think that Michigan came into that game saying, if we really come after this guy, could he get the ball in his hand and complete it accurately? The answer is probably no. Are we going to give up a couple of big plays on the ground if we do this and he sees an open lane and takes off and runs? Yes, we are. They were willing to run that risk, and it paid off for them. It almost bit them in the second half, but for the most part, they gave up some plays, but they also put Alabama in a bind. I don't know if you'll see that level of confusion with this offensive line at Washington.
Okay. Who do you like to win the game?
I think Michigan should win the game. But my problem with that pick is that every single time any of us in the media, as broadcasters, other teams, other coaches, pick against Washington, they always come up and win. I mean, look at the first Oregon game. Look at the second Oregon game. Then they goof around with Arizona and Stanford and come up with a way to win. They go and they take on Texas in the Sugar Bowl. And I know that score was a little closer than the game was, but, everybody had Texas. Texas was favored. Washington comes up and wins. They might be having one of those magical seasons, Bo, where it's just meant to be. And Michigan might be too. And so I would say Michigan, and there's two reasons why. They are tied for the least amount of penalties in all of college football, top of the game, and they are +17 in turnover margin. You combine their talent, execution, and coaching with those two statistics, and it's hard to beat them.
Tom Luginbill with ESPN. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. You kind of hedge there. I'm okay with it, but
I am hedging. This is a game that I can't. I want to sit there and say that Michigan's better and Michigan's going to beat them, but then every time you say that, Washington comes out of nowhere and just rises to the occasion. And I don't think if Washington were able to put up some points early, okay, I don't think Michigan is built to get into a track meet. That's not their game. That's not how they're built. That's not what their mode of operation is. And Washington wants to do that. Like Washington lives in that world. So I think this thing is going to be, it's filled with so much intrigue. And as we saw with both semifinal games, we saw two great football games with four great teams. And I think we're going to go down to the wire with this one tonight.
What about McCarthy? And I think this is kind of an underrated element of his game. J.J. McCarthy, for our listeners, is the starting QB for Michigan. I'm always wondering how much of our SEC fans watch outside of the SEC footprint. How important or how valuable could it be, the fact that he can run it? He's more athletic and mobile than people give him credit for, Tom.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% correct. He's a really dynamic athlete. The offense just doesn't require that much of him when it comes to that type of thing. But it is a danger you've got to account for. He really impressed me late in that game. I thought he kind of showed that not only were they winning with him, but they kind of won because of him last week. And I thought that was impressive. It was something that maybe he hadn't quite had on his resume against the top tier team. And to me, that stood out. I'll tell you one thing to look out for tonight. And it could have bitten them and it could have cost them the game, but Michigan better start cleaning up their special teams.
Yeah.
Because their kicking game was horrendous and they were very fortunate to get away with it. And I don't think you can have that happen 2 years in a row and find that type of luck, or 2 games in a row and find that type of luck.
What are your expectations tonight? Like 27-24 in that range or lower, higher? Where are you going?
I think it's going to be higher. I think
Okay.
it might be like the Texas-Washington game,
Okay.
or maybe even higher than that. And I could be way off base. I know how good a team Michigan is on defense, but quite honestly, they haven't played a team like Washington on offense, and very few people have that can throw the ball deep and routinely complete throws that flip field position in the span of one play or result in points. And that'll be interesting to see how Michigan handles that.
But you're expecting, from asking you earlier, a close game, a lot of back and forth, and kind of who
Yeah.
knows how it plays out the last 6 or 7 minutes of the fourth quarter.
I really am. And to be honest with you, that's where I think Washington could potentially have an edge, because when you played in the Pac-12 this year, you were almost in a one-possession game every single week because the quarterback play was so good, the scoring was so high that you had to be relevant late in the fourth quarter. So that's not going to be foreign territory for Washington. That's why, I picked Michigan, but there's a lot of things that just, I don't know, man. There's something about this Washington team. I don't know. There's just something that scares me about them.
Dylan Johnson is there. He's had a good year.
Yeah.
He got hurt a little bit, but they say he's okay going into this game. He's a physical dude, and Penix makes him better because of Penix, as you mentioned earlier, his threat and those three wide receivers on what they can do to you vertically.
Yeah, and Dylan Johnson, it was really from the USC game on that the run game started to emerge. And now all of a sudden, leading up to that SC game, folks didn't have to necessarily load up versus the box. They weren't necessarily threatened by Washington running the ball, which made their offensive output even more impressive because you're seeing a lot of drop 7, drop 8, and they're still picking people apart. Now, I think with Dylan Johnson, if they get a little bit ahead of the chains in the run game, and all of a sudden they're able to run it, which I don't know if they'll be able to run it against that Michigan front, but if they are able to run it, now all of a sudden Michigan's got to make a choice. We either add another guy into the box to try to slow this thing down, but now we're vulnerable on the back end. So pick your poison. And I think that if you're Michigan on defense, you'd love for Washington to be one-dimensional and not put you in that position to make that choice.
All right, last one. I know you got to go. Is this Jim Harbaugh's last game at Michigan?
Yeah, I don't think he'll be the head coach there by Friday.
Okay.
Maybe by Wednesday.
All right. God.
And the reason why I say that too, Bo, is he has done nothing but stick his middle finger up to the NCAA at every level of authority, regardless of what he's been accused from. He has never backed down from it. He's basically just said, fine, come and get me. Well, why is that? Because he knows he ain't going to be there to have to deal with it.
Yeah. I'd hire DeBoer, but I think they'll promote from within. I call that very collegiate and on my show. And I know Sharon Moore did a good job, but if I had a chance to go get DeBoer, who's from the Midwest and would love to be the Michigan or Ohio State coach, Tom Luginbill, I'd be on a jet before you could even turn around.
No doubt. I mean, I'm with you, man. It would be a big one. Be a big hire. But
Hey.
my question is it as good of a job or is it the same job?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's not as good all right. It's a little bit better than Washington, but not as much as the national media portrays it in Ann Arbor, Luke's.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
I totally agree.
Hey, thanks for working with us today. We'll talk soon, okay?
All right, buddy. Be good. See you.
Tom Luginbill on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. So, Jason, I like where he went. He's like, look, you want to go Michigan. But Washington is dangerous, and Michigan hasn't faced anybody like this on offense. Ohio State was not this powerful on the offensive side of the football. Penix and those three receivers will get you in a heartbeat. He's the best deep ball thrower. We mentioned this last week. Luginbill just said it. Best deep ball thrower in the history of college football. We don't get a lot of that. I mean, you can connect deep, but it's not someone who is that accurate throwing the ball consistently down the field. Granted, those receivers are really good too.
Yeah.
Now, flip side, Michigan secondary is the best in college football. Now, the game is called in favor of the offense, PI, whatever. I can't wait. I can't wait to see. All right, so do I need to do a quick, just one game, call it, show me the money?
Yeah, let's do that because I'm interested to see, because I know that you were saying that you think it's not as many points. It shouldn't be 5.5. What about? I mean, there's some 4.5, some 5s floating around.
Okay. Caesars has it at 5.5. The Out of Bounds Show is driven by your next Ford F-150 at Mack Hike Ford, I-55 North in Jackson. Good morning. Welcome in. Mack Hike Ford in Jackson has the best selection of pre-owned and new Ford F-150 trucks. Want to say good morning. Welcome in to the Out of Bounds Show. We've got the national championship game tonight right there in Houston, Texas. Michigan and Washington, 6:30 kick. And I don't know how much ball you've watched of the two teams. We have watched them. This is probably it for Harbaugh. And then DeBoer is like the next up-and-coming dude. He's the young up-and-comer. He's like Dabo 10 years ago. And he has led Washington to the national championship. Neither one recruits in the top 10. Dave Bartu said, was this the window this year? Or will the window still be there next year? Georgia was down. Bama was down. Ohio State was down. I don't know. We are the Out of Bounds Show. I'm your host, Bo Bounds. This is ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Can another non-elite recruiter like Ole Miss or Missouri or someone else make another run next year, except there's added games? Washington and Michigan didn't have to go through the added game stretch where it's all about depth. That's where Georgia and Bama and some of the other teams get you. We're also going to see if LSU was down. So we had Powers down. Bama was down. Georgia was down. LSU was down. Ohio State was down. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Who else? Southern Cal.
Florida State was cooking until,
They were up.
Yeah.
No question. They had a heck of a team, and they could be right here tonight and have a chance to win the game. That's a good point. Want to thank you for going to Apple Podcast or Spotify. We are on Spotify. Search Out of Bounds with Bo Bounds. I mean, look, we had Larry Bow on last week. Played for the Phillies and the Cubs. He talked about Pete Rose as a teammate. Mike Schmidt as a teammate. That's right, my wheelhouse as a kid. We had Marion Crowder on, Madison Central soccer star, Gatorade Player of the Year, all SEC at Georgia. Now she's with ESPN SEC Network. She was great telling stories. Tom Luginbill on Michael Van Buren last week. And we talked a lot of Lane and Levy and transfer portal. And then, of course, the Quinshon Judkins thing. Best running back in the SEC. Leaving Ole Miss, looks like he's going to be an Ohio State Buckeye. But our podcast from last week loaded up. Mike Detillier was great, too. You want to do a little Show Me the Money?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
When the lights are about to be turned off, you know what you need. Because you got to somehow make that paper, right?
Right. Show me the money!
You come to the right place for that. Because it's time for Bo Bounds to
Show me the money!
show you the...
Show Me the Money. Powered by the Golden Moon Casino, Sportsbook, and Lounge. It's a great place to watch the games. TVs, full bar, food, everything you want. The Timeout Lounge inside the Golden Moon Casino. It is the sportsbook of choice for the Out of Bounds Show. Bet $50 there. Play award-winning Dancing Rabbit Golf Club for $30. Jason?
So the line's been moving around a lot, but it's also Jim Harbaugh's possibly last game in college football. He's got to whip up something special, but Bo, I need to know. It's 5.5 for the Wolverines. Show me the money. Are you going Wolverines or are you going the Huskies?
I'll take the points, but Michigan wins.
Okay.
That's too many.
Okay, can I get a score prediction?
30-27. Did I go low? Everybody seems to think this thing's going to go 35-34, 35-31.
30-27 Wolverines. Who do you think has a bigger game, McCarthy or Penix?
Oh, I think they'll both make big plays. But I think McCarthy will get it done in the end.
Is he the deciding factor, or is the Michigan defense the deciding factor?
I think the Michigan defense, they're not going to get all the stops because of Penix and the wide receivers and Dylan Johnson. But I think they can get just enough to win the game. But who knows? Maybe Penix torches them through the air. and comes out the 6-year guy with all the injuries who started his career at Indiana, who doesn't care about football, and led them to another number 9 ranking before getting hurt. Maybe he pulls it out. And we get some West Coast representation for the first time since when? Well, Oregon was in some national title games, right? They just didn't win it. They made 2, lost both. Chip Kelly and Helfrich, I think. Yeah. Or did Helfrich lose in the semifinal game, Jason, when Ohio State busted them up for what felt like 80-6? Anyway, it's Southern Cal would be the last team out there. And Pete Carroll, as far as West Coast representation as far as national title, Oregon has been since then when they went on their amazing run. So I say Michigan wins, but I'll take the points.
Do you think college football is ready to see Harbaugh leave or wants him to stay because he's such a big storyline?
Well, I want him to stay because he's such a big storyline. He's fun, and he makes Michigan what they are. That's a program that it's much more difficult to win at than people think, just because they still have a kind of 1960s, 70s mentality.
Yeah.
And again, Schembechler never won it. But they're big university, big alumni base, and that's where we've talked about this a million times. All the media for decades was in the Northeast and in the Midwest. So whatever they did, they got coverage. Has the program been overrated for a big part of the last 50 years? Yes. Has Harbaugh been nothing short of amazing? He's won everywhere. San Diego didn't have scholarships. Stanford was awful. We forget how, and now they're bad again. They were awful.
Yeah.
The San Francisco 49ers were terrible. So San Diego, that's the college, not the Chargers, who are now LA. San Diego, not San Diego State that has scholarships, Jason. San Diego, non-scholarship team. He won. Stanford, rock bottom. He built it and won. San Francisco 49ers built it and drives them to the Super Bowl. Ripped the Saints' heart out. I'm still not happy about that. And that loss at San Francisco when that game went back and forth the last, 5, 6, 7 minutes of the game where I felt like both teams were scoring every 30 seconds. And I'm like, what's happening here? And I wanted Sean and New Orleans to get past San Fran. And then he goes to Michigan, and that's a rebuild too. It's much easier to get players at Bama, Georgia, Florida, LSU, Texas, even Ohio State because of their state, and some of the other teams that we talk about than the Michigan Wolverines. He's done a remarkable job. I just saw the number up there, and I missed it on that USA Pawn TV, powered by USAPawn.com. Smart TVs, tablets, and so on. Their mega store. But I think it said he's 39-3 in the last 3 seasons, but we'll have to go back and look. He's been amazing. But yeah, I think he's going to the NFL. Let's talk about the jobs open and Dak Prescott on the other side. And now we've got the playoff format and scenario. Cowboys hosting the Packers. Guess what? They're in that Sunday afternoon time slot again. Oh, and you're going to have Peacock to watch Saturday. People were raising hell about that on Twitter X. Twitter X at Bo Bounds. Good morning. Welcome in.